David, you've mentioned before the idea of police having to live in the communities where they are policing. Do you think this should be made a requirement? So there's a couple complications with that. When I gave my list of here's how police should be reformed, one of the things I mentioned was requiring some portion of the police department to live where they are policing. Now, if you think of a really big city like New York City, you could be policing the Bronx, but living in Staten Island. And if you understand the sort of class and racial dynamics of that, you might not think that that's fantastic. But putting aside some specific examples, I think that the idea of requiring a percentage of police to live in the city where they are working is a good idea. The problems include, number one, a lot of police don't live where they police because they can't afford it. And so if your paradigm is defunding police, unfortunately, defunding police is often inconsistent with requiring police to live where they are policing. And in fact, if you really want to do that, you may have to look at maybe not salary increases, but cost of living bonuses for police that are living in some of the areas they police. There's a reason why lots of NYPD live 90 minutes out. In New Jersey or in upstate New York or not upstate, but north of the city or wherever. And it's because they can't afford to live in New York City. So that's something that has to be considered. The other thing that I think is important is that the reason we want police living in, or it's really the opposite. It's more that we want police that already live where they are going to be working. There's a number of reasons for that. You could be more likely to de-escalate rather than escalate if you're policing your own community. It would make you more acquainted with the dynamics of your city in terms of better identifying what is a threat and what isn't a threat. And this is not to excuse when police obviously misbehave and say something's a threat that obviously is not after the fact in order to get out of trouble. But understanding the dynamics of your city better would certainly be a really good thing. And being integrated into the community would be a really, really good thing. The possible downsides would be, are police more at risk of retaliation against themselves and their families if they're known to live in the community? Would that be something that we need to think about? Could it lead to selective enforcement? Because if you live in a community and you police it, you develop relationships. It could skew your relationship where you are no longer dealing with the community objectively, depending on whether you know the people or whether you don't. I think that those are relatively small risks. I think that the idea of saying all police must live where they are policing is impossible. But I do think that the idea of requiring a certain percentage, and if you need to give them cost of living in order to be able to afford it, I would actually be okay with that because I do think it would dramatically improve policing. Now let's step back from this question. There's a different question that we also need to talk about, which is regardless of whether police come from in the community or out of the community, there is a self-selection bias for who wants to be a police officer. And there's lots of liberal police officers. I'm not saying that there aren't, but on average, police are more culturally conservative than the average population. And that's something that we need to think about as well. So you maybe would be able to deal with that. For example, if you have a liberal city that is overwhelmingly policed by rural police officers who live in conservative areas an hour and a half outside of a city. Okay, you could fix some of that political imbalance by bringing in people who live in the city. But that's a bigger question that police departments are going to have to deal with. The cultural conservatism of police. There's a self-selection bias. It exists in the military as well. Doesn't mean there aren't left-wing people in the military. In fact, Joe Biden is now leading among members of the military. But that has to be thought of as well when we think about where should those who police us live. We also have to think about these cultural components. One of our sponsors today is Surfshark, which is a premium VPN service. They're giving my audience 83% off a 2-year plan plus 3 extra months for free, which all comes out to about $2 a month. And if you're not already using a VPN service, you really are opening yourself up to internet service providers logging and selling your internet history, tech companies tracking what you do online, even government surveillance. Surfshark is a VPN that helps protect you from all of those things by hiding your IP address when you're browsing online. Comes with a bunch of other great features. It's a company you can actually trust with your privacy. And you can install Surfshark VPN on unlimited devices. They never keep logs of your internet activity. And you can even use it to stream shows and movies that are only available in other countries. Surfshark is giving my audience 83% off a 2-year plan plus 3 extra months free. So that comes out to just about $2 a month, which is almost nothing relative to the peace of mind you will have while browsing online. Just go to surfshark.deals/Pakman. I've put the link underneath this video, and make sure to use the coupon code Pakman.